What you're seeing in the background is a collection of different showcases of Minestom. The project was started back in August of 2019 and has since evolved into an open source server-side game engine for Minecraft. It is not just a plugin system built on top of Minecraft like Spigot or Forge, but rather a complete rewrite of the server side of Minecraft. This comes with several advantages and disadvantages. Because it's built from scratch, it contains close to none of Minecraft's features and is as bare bones as you can get. But this also yields unprecedented performance and customizability. In this video, we'll create a functioning Minestom server and explore its possibilities and API. We'll also look at its differences in contrast to something like Spigot, but first some disadvantages of using Minestom over something like Spigot. Stuff we take for granted on Spigot like world generation, items, blocks, entities, and even something as basic as PvP or crafting does not exist in Minestom and has to be built from the ground up. This can also be seen as an advantage because it allows us to make a more cohesive gameplay experience or make the gameplay more fitting for our game mode instead of going the easy way out and using what's already in Minecraft. In contrast to something like Spigot, which has a humongous plugin community, Minestom doesn't have the plethora of plugins and developers that it does. This might not make it an option for medium to big sized servers which need high quality anti-cheats and reliable gameplay, as Minestom doesn't have the 10 years that Spigot got to patch bugs and exploits. I will assume you know how to code in Java and have an IDE ready to go. Now let's create a new Java project using Java 17 and Gradle as our build system with Kotlin as the DSL. Let's create the project and open the build.gradle.kts file. We can now add Minestom as dependency and Jetpack as a repository. You can find the latest Minestom release on Maven Central. We can now create the Minecraft server object and start the server as showcased on the Minestom wiki, which you can find in the description. To more easily be able to start the server, we'll create a start configuration which runs our main method with Java 17. You can add environment variables if you want or change the working directory. To run the server with our start configuration, simply click the play or run buttons and we can try to join the server, but it won't let us because the server doesn't know where to send us. By default, there are no worlds to send us to and therefore we're stuck at the loading screen. In Minestom, worlds don't really exist anyway, because Minestom has its own world system called instances. To create an instance, we create an instance container using the instance manager. We'll create a generator so we don't spawn in the void when we join the server. We will then use the global event handler to register a player join event, which will send us to the instance we just created when we join the server. We will also move the event listener out of the main class into its own player configuration class to keep some order in our code. In the old way, we could directly reference the instance container because it was in the same class, but using this method we have to use a getter to fetch the container from the main method. To use getters, you need to have Lombok installed. Instead of using a lambda method when registering the listener, we can simply reference the method. We now got a functioning Minecraft server, but using the word functional is definitely a stretch. We don't even have commands like /gamemode. Let's try to fix that. We'll begin by adding a new command. We first define the name of the command as the first argument in the super statement and follow with any aliases we would want. The lambda method in the default executor executes when no other executor can be used, and therefore we simply send a usage message. It first gets interesting when you introduce arguments. An argument is any one word followed after the command. For example, creative would be the first argument in /gamemode creative at p, and the selector would be the second. In the first argument, we point to the gamemode.class enum, which dictates which arguments are valid and what to autocomplete. We also format it to be lowercase as it is in vanilla. The lambda method in the callback of the argument gets executed when the argument is incorrect or doesn't match the argument type. Here we fetch the argument the player typed and write them a message. To write the message, we use something called adventure components. These components are used to dictate the formatting of the message. We can, for instance, change the color of the text and then append another component with its own color. This component message can then be sent to the player using the sender object. We can now finally add the actual logic that happens when the player types the command correctly. We do this using the add syntax method, which requires a lambda method. In this method, we first check if it's a player executing the command, and if not, return. We then check if the player already has their game mode set to the game mode they provided. If so, send them a message and return. If both of these conditions fail, we actually set their game mode and send them a message like so. We can now use the command manager to register the command we just made, just like we did with listeners. If we start the server again and join, we see that it works and all of our failsafes are working correctly. But there's still a problem. If I want to use the F3 plus F4 shortcut, it says I don't have permission to do so. To fix this, we simply set the player's permission level to 4 when they join the server. While we're first at it, we can also enable Mojang authentication, which is just like turning on online mode. Now everything works as it should, but anyone who joins the server can use the command, but for right now that really doesn't matter. You could try on your own to add a permission system, store which players have permission to do commands using a database, and make this as advanced as you would like.